Welcome everybody to another session for web development. I hope you're all having fun. I know we're making a lot of progress out there. I love it. And it's been fun working alongside each of you to get your sites up and running. Tonight is a review session, so we're just generally going to go through sections 1 through 8 or 1 through 7 and take any questions that might come up while we're reviewing each of those sessions. And then next week was just scheduled as a support session for any remaining questions. So we could use tonight somewhat in that way as well. So feel free to ask any questions related to things you're working on your website. And depending on how many people we have on tonight, I know a couple told me that they couldn't make it, but would be listening to the recording. So we might have enough time to open up the lines and take questions live. Just remember that this is being recorded and will be posted on a public site somewhere. Well, not quite public, but for attendees of the class to hear. So just keep that in mind if you happen to speak, because all of your words will be captured for eternity. So anyway, that's what we're here to do tonight. And again, ask any questions that you like throughout the evening. I'll keep an eye out, and that's what we're doing. It's all about review. Then I'm going to try not to introduce any new material because I think everybody's a little bit overloaded and has a lot to work with. But if you've got anything going on your website that you'd like to know more about, we can do a couple things. I can either demonstrate or show on our class website, or if you like, we can even open up your website if you want to do that, again, in a recorded session. And if we are, let me do that on my end. We wouldn't show your screens so we can make sure that there aren't any security exposures for passwords and that sort of thing getting captured in the recording. So we're going to go back here to session 1, starting with domain registration, hosting, and security, and just a general overview of website structure and technology. And I should also mention now, if there are any specific questions you have about anything at all that we've talked about, feel free to go ahead and put those into the question box, because because we don't have a fixed agenda for this evening, we have a lot more time to answer questions and get a little bit, I wouldn't call it off track because that's what the session's for, but we can explore more things than we normally can because we don't have a specific thing to get into. Okay, I see one now. Cloudflare versus GoDaddy. Okay, so I see another one. Cache, I believe. Got it. Okay, yeah. Just for your information, because you see you put a question mark. It's spelled C-A-C-H-E, and that's cache. And that's based. Well, we'll start with Cloudflare versus GoDaddy. So first of all, almost every platform that started doing one thing is now doing multiple things because they try to expand their business out. So GoDaddy started as domain registration only, and that's where you just lock down your domain that you want to use. So if I wanted to, get domain123.com, I go to someplace like GoDaddy and I register the domain, and that gives me a license to that domain for as long as I keep my subscription up. If I drop off and miss a payment, you usually have 30 days before somebody else can come and claim that domain, and it goes back out on the market. And so that's what GoDaddy's for. That's what their primary purpose has always been. However, they started adding on other services, like they saw people like Green Geeks and HostGator and Bluehost and all these other companies making money by providing web hosting. So GoDaddy added web hosting as a feature. And then they try to make it as simple as possible for people who might not be very technical, and they'll offer managed GoDaddy services. So they're supposed to maintain the server, keep the website online and running correctly. And they've also started adding some other things. And one of the things that they have in their hosted services is called a CDN, which is a content distribution network. Now, it happens that that's exactly what Cloudflare is. So what Cloudflare does is it makes a copy of your site and basically puts it as a layer in front of your current site. So it helps for a lot of things. One, it obscures your real IP address, so nobody can hack you through your IP because they can't even tell what it is. Another is it provides a whole extra layer of security. Let me go into Cloudflare here and we can talk about some of this stuff. What's amazing is that this is all free. The basic services that they offer are all free. So when you come in, you can set this up for all your sites. I have hundreds of sites on several Cloudflare accounts. You can see some of them here. And I'm going to open one up to show you what kind of things it can do. So let me go back to, I want to check this one because we took it offline a little bit ago. And then, let's see, resource recycling. Okay. Good, we're live. Okay, so this is one of my clients. You can see that in the last 24 hours, they've gotten about 8,300 unique visitors, and that 64% of that content that was delivered was cached. And so what a cache does is Cloudflare basically stores a copy or an image of your website in the cloud, so that when somebody goes to visit your site, they're hitting the Cloudflare layer first. And when they hit that layer first, it reduces the pressure on your server, especially if you have fairly inexpensive server services. This will take all the load off. Otherwise, they'll start telling you have to upgrade because you're overloading the server. And so you can see here how much of this has come through. Let's see, we'll look at caching here. Oh, they moved some things around. We'll take a look at analytics. Okay, so we had been having an issue. This is a recycling magazine, and I also built their website. And we were having an issue where at certain times when they would release a new edition, the site would crash because the server couldn't handle it. So when we put them on Cloudflare, you can see what happens at their peak. So when they release something, let's say this morning at 10 a.m., actually I think it does happen at 9, they send out their letter, their newsletter online. They send that out via email to their subscribers, and you can see what happens. So suddenly traffic peaks from 6 to 3 on the days that they release a new edition. Now, normally that would be so much traffic. You can see they had 25,000 people today, and that would at one time. So that would normally crash the site. And when that happens, your server's just getting overloaded. It'd be like having 1,000 people all call your cell phone at the same time. You just can't handle it. But you can see here from the dark blue where it says cached, that means that all of that traffic, instead of hitting the server, was served by Cloudflare. And so that's one thing that Cloudflare does. So it helps you with caching on the cloud. And you can even see here in the overview where you have an option to, let me see, sorry, they move things around all the time. There's a place that where you can see settings that basically keeps your site online even if your server goes down, because it's got a cached copy that it will keep for you. So then again, you get the analytics, and this is all the free version. You can control your DNS, and that means if you ever need to make changes to your server, to your mail, anything like that, you can do it right here instead of logging in on your registration host. And one of the most important things is it provides a free SSL. So any of you who've been going through this process lately know that if you try to get an SSL through GoDaddy, they have a special right now, $65 for the first year. Then I think it goes to $90 to every year after that. Then I guarantee the price will go up. But Cloudflare offers it for free. So all you have to do to get Cloudflare working is you add your site. And so I click add site. I put in my site name, add site. And just for the heck of it, let me see if I've got here. I don't know if I've added our class site yet. If not, we'll try that. So I can walk everybody through it. Oh, already exists. Okay, so I could show you that one. I didn't want to dig in too deep on these other like live client sites. So I'm going to go back to our class site, which is conferencereg.com right here. So when I added that site, one of the things they want me to do is change my name servers. What your name servers do is they tell anybody who comes to the internet and comes to your domain, the name servers tell the internet where to go to find your site. So if normally you had your name servers pointed at your GoDaddy server, what you do instead is you have it point to the Cloudflare server. So that's where you would change it from whatever the NS records were for GoDaddy to the NS records they give you here, which might be, fryer.cloudflare.com or uma.cloudflare.com, whatever they are. And they'll be different for each person. For each account, they can be different. And what you do is you change your name servers at the registration to point to here instead. Now that doesn't hurt anything, because if you go to your DNS, and I can show this because it's not a client site or anything confidential or important, you can see what happens is, just imagine that I were hosting on GoDaddy and I wanted to add Cloudflare. So all I do when I go to add that site to Cloudflare, it pulls in all these records from GoDaddy. All these records are available on the web for anybody who wants to look for them, for any website, unless you have it hidden. And that's one of the things that Cloudflare does, is it lets me obfuscate these. So if somebody went out and did a search on conferencereg.com, they're going to come up with IP addresses for Cloudflare, not my server. And that means there's no way for them to attack my server by knowing my IP address. So it provides a really important level of security. And then if I needed to change anything, it'd be fine. But what these do is they all point back to, in this example, GoDaddy. So it's not changing anything. All my site files are still on GoDaddy. Everything's right where we built them. Nothing's different. The only difference is you have this layer of Cloudflare that people hit first. They hide your IP address. Now, if you go to call GoDaddy for help, they might not know what's going on. So you have to tell them that you're using Cloudflare. And if you ever want to temporarily remove Cloudflare just to get issues worked on, then you can go down here and you can either put in development mode to bypass cache, or you can completely remove it if you want to. So you can pause Cloudflare on a site or just remove the site from Cloudflare. So that'll give them time to fix whatever they need to fix if they've got something going on. We had one student who had an issue similar to this, who GoDaddy said, oh, you're not even hosted on our site, which was absolutely ridiculous because it was all built right into WordPress. And as soon as you click the button at the top, it took you right into the GoDaddy management system. So GoDaddy was wrong. And you should expect these tech people to be wrong, unfortunately, too frequently. There's been times I've called them and then I teach them things and figure it out while we're on the call together, and then I leave. But they've told me, I know people who've worked in these centers, and a lot of times they'll hire, high school kids and they give them a manual and they say, if they call with this question, here's what you say. And that's about the extent of their knowledge until they get some more in-depth experience. So anyway, that's what Cloudflare does. And it also, again, provides the free SSL. So that's what this is. So you never have to pay for it. They also add a firewall. And that, I don't know why information's not coming up here. Here we go. I'm on my Mac tonight, which my PC kept crashing, and it crashed again about 5:20 today, and that's the third time today it crashed. So I didn't want to take a risk of it crashing while we're online together. So I'm on my Mac, but it's on Wi-Fi instead of Ethernet, so it's a little bit slower. Well, it's not important to show what the content is here in the firewall. Just suffice it to say that it has a firewall. And you can set up your own rules for the firewall, and you can see the types of things that it does. So if you've been in my class on cybersecurity, one of the things I talk about is how you can take down any website anywhere with pretty low hacking skills if you really want to. And with what's called a low orbit, low ion cannon attack. And what that means is basically you've got a bunch of machines that are all going to the same website all at the same time all day. Then it'll hit it so much that, using that cell phone example again, it basically launches a DDoS, which is a domain denial of service attack. And what that means is that all these machines are hitting somebody else's website, 1,000 times a minute, and it's overloading it so it won't come up for anybody. That's what a DDoS attack is. And so this prevents that, because if somebody tries to DDoS you, they're hitting Cloudflare instead. They're not even touching your server. So your site will still come up. And then you can see, you can go through and do a speed analysis. So they'll load and tell you, here you go, without Cloudflare versus with Cloudflare. So how much faster your site loads. You can control caching. You can set up individual page rules. So all the top tech people that I know are now using Cloudflare, especially since it gives you so much for free. But it does take control away from whoever might be on the other side managing from the GoDaddy side in this case. But it's very easy to fix the issue. And the issue we ran into with this particular project that I'm alluding to is that GoDaddy has just recently added an option for a CDN, which is a content distribution network. Well, that's exactly what Cloudflare is. So we already had everything up on Cloudflare, and then either a user or an admin turned on GoDaddy CDN afterwards. And when I went and saw, so it made certain images not appear because they were stored in a different place than it was looking for them. And so when I went to the front page and inspected the code, I found CDN code that was not Cloudflare code, which meant they were storing images in the wrong place. So to resolve it, I went in and basically just turned off the CDN option in GoDaddy, and everything came back. And that's what the GoDaddy person should have known to do. When I did a search on the issue, they even had something in the GoDaddy forums with the solution. So somebody who was on GoDaddy's end, it said specifically, if you lose your images, here's what you do. And that person should have known that because it was in their own help files, but those things happen. So it was easily resolved, but that's what it does for you. So that's the difference between Cloudflare and GoDaddy. And a cache is just a stored version of your website. Now, cache happens all along the system. So sometimes you might change something on your website and you go to look and it doesn't seem like it's changed. Oftentimes that's just because of cache. And even if you change your whole theme, like I have one client right now on her computer, we got online to start a meeting. I said, what do you think of the new site, new design? She said, I don't know, I'm still seeing the old site. And I said, what? And we looked and she could still go through the whole old site. It was all right there, but just for her on that computer, because it was all cached in her browser. So once I created a new page with a new address that she hadn't had previously cached, she clicked on that and suddenly saw the new site, and then the whole new site started showing up. So you can have cache at the server level, you have cache within plugins, you have cache in WordPress, you have cache in your browser. And so all of those things might be full of information that's basically lagging in terms of real time. So if you updated your site, you might not see it there yet, but it's also what allows sites to load faster. So for example, we'll see all these image files. If I were to go to load this page again, it's going to load a lot faster because all those image files are already stored in my browser cache. So you see how fast that came up. And let's look at, what were we looking at before? Firewall. Let's see if that comes up. Oh no, there's nothing to show there anyway. So you've got rules. You can set up your own rules. So you can do all of this for free through Cloudflare, and that's what the purpose of that is. Okay, I'm not seeing any follow-up questions to that, so we can move on. But if you have any others, feel free to speak up on any subject, and we will dig in. So when we talk about SSL that we just mentioned is provided free from Cloudflare, that's what gives your page this little lock right here. And you should see that at all times. You can, if you don't, it's going to hurt your search engine optimization. So Google takes points away if you don't have a secure site. And if you, if somebody has their settings set the way I do, sometimes it won't even show an insecure site. It'll say that the site is insecure and it won't pull it up, or it'll have a certificate error or something like that. So there are ways around that too. I have pretty high level security, but I can get in pretty much anywhere if I want to see the site. But I'll know right away that it's not secure, and your visitors will see the same thing. So let me see if I can show an example of that. Well, I'm sure you've seen it. I can't think of any sites I know of that are insecure. You know what? As I recall, I think this was it, and it surprised the heck out of me. No, I was thinking for some reason NFL.com wasn't secure. I went on a major site the other day along these lines and found that it wasn't a secure site, which was totally shocking in 2020 to have a company that big not be secure. But that's what that free SSL does. And so over time, you know, if you think you're paying $90 a year, you know, over 10 years, that's $1,000 that you've paid for an SSL through GoDaddy that you could have had for free here. And that's why one of the reasons I like using Cloudflare. All right, so domain registration, we've talked a little bit about hosting and security. The most important part of security, once your site is set up, is passwords. Always make sure that you use a strong password, and don't use the same password everywhere. In fact, I've recommended several times to people in a lot of classes to use something like Norton Password Manager. One of the things I like about Norton, and I think I can do this without exposing anything. Well, not much, a few IP addresses, but that's not important. These are all secure places. But Norton will have all of my information for all of my sites. I have more than 1,000 sites saved in Norton, and I can open this in any browser on any computer. So all I have to do is log in on Norton Password Manager, and if I go to a new site, it'll ask me if I want to save it. It also has tools for things that are frequently hacked, like Facebook and LinkedIn, where once a month, this password manager will go in, log in, change my password, and update Password Manager. So my password for Facebook and LinkedIn change every month, and they're pretty complex. They're like 20 characters and all crazy stuff you'd never find in a dictionary, but I don't have to do it myself. It's fully automated. So that's obviously very helpful for something like that. And then you don't forget your passwords. So passwords seem to slow people down quite a bit, and I understand why. And so then they go to a thing where they use the same password everywhere, and that's even more dangerous because once somebody gets one password, and again, we're getting pretty deep into security here, but that stuff ends up on the dark web. If you want to know if you have a password problem, you can check your email address at, okay, let me see if I can remember this. I'm going to have, okay, I'm using LeetSpeak here. Okay, good. That is how they did it. Pwned is basically owned. LeetSpeak is kind of a geek nerd hacker language, and Pwned is a combination of words. But anyway, it's basically like owning somebody else's account. And it's so what you can do is you can put your email address in here and see if it shows up on the dark web. So you can see here things that they've just reported recently. And so that's where you can see here over 9 million, or that's billion, pwned accounts. So just to check it out, I'm going to try to see. I have one account that I just use for throwaway stuff, and that's this one. Well, I actually have a whole bunch of accounts that I use for throwaway stuff, But this one doesn't attach to anything at all important. So I haven't checked it frequently, but let's see what happens here. Here we go. So it's telling me, oh no, pwned breached, 3 breach sites, no found paste. So it's telling me that somewhere on the dark web, this email address is out there with some other information related to me. And I know that Yahoo was hacked. This is what they're talking about. Yahoo was hacked and put out a list of 458 million unique email addresses with multiple passwords hacked from various systems. So you can see right there that this email address may not be secure. And the first thing I should do is go in and change my password using a strong password generator, update my Norton, and then if I want to do two-factor authentication, that's a pretty powerful tool to use, but it's also can be a problem. Two-factor authentication is basically where I go to log in on my website, and when I try to log in, it'll text my phone with a code, and it'll say, if you want to log in, you need to put your code in. So that's what the second factor is. So I both have to know my login information for the website or the account, whatever it is. And then once I get in with that, then I also have to have my phone in my hand and put in the secondary code to allow the process to complete. That seems great if you've got your phone with you all the time, but what are you going to do if you lose your phone or something else happens and you just don't have it with you or your battery dies? So it could be problematic as well. And a lot of times it depends on how secure you need things to be. There are other options too, like one's called YubiKey, and that's what they use for most of the people at Google. I have one myself, and it's a USB key. You can wear, like in a necklace around your neck or carry it in your pocket, in your wallet, someplace safe. And what you can do is you can stick that into a USB drive, and then with your YubiKey, you can open everything up. But without that YubiKey, you can't get into any of your accounts. So they use it in highly secure areas at Google, so somebody's private work or research can't be accessed by other Google employees, even accidentally. So let's see, I see another question that's come in. Do we set up our account through our web host, and then do we set up, let me see the rest of that question, bear with me for a minute. Do we set our mail up through our web host, and then do we set it up to forward to another email? I've seen the directions on how to do this, but want to know if that's how we should proceed. There are numerous ways to set up email. If you're hosting through any place like Green Geeks, for example, you can set mail up on your Green Geeks server. So if I go into, okay, give me a second here, I'll get into a Green Geeks account and show you where I'm talking about. All right, I'm going to freeze my screen for a second for security reasons, since we'll be going into a live account. Once I log in, I'll unfreeze my screen. Okay, let me get to accounts. All right, and here's one that's just okay. So now I'm in an account that is just a development site. There's nothing live using this. So we can play around in here a little bit. But when you log in on cPanel through Green Geeks or through your host, I don't know if GoDaddy still offers cPanel. I don't think they do, but they offer something similar. So it'll have a layout similar to this. It just won't be called cPanel. And GoDaddy sells email services. So they have a whole other thing where they're trying to get you to buy email. But what they don't tell people is there's also a free GoDaddy web-based email. And you can use that if you have any domain, but they really hide that deep. You have to dig to find it. And it's web-based, so which is actually fine. I prefer that to downloading mail to my computer, because all that does is fill up your hard drive and possibly infect your machine. So cloud web-based is generally the best way to go for mail. So you can see here there's an email section. The easy way to do it is a forwarder. So if I click forwarder and I already have, say, a Gmail account, then I can say, and we'll just do this domain here. So I can say we're going to add a forwarder. And I'm going to send anything like info at beyondzerowaste.net would forward to and put in, say, my regular address or my Gmail account. So if anybody sends mail to that address, it's now going to forward to my regular email. And you can do a lot of other things with filters too to make sure you don't start getting spammed. You can pipe it into a program. You can set it up if you're getting a bunch of spam. I remember the spam houses used to take one domain, and they would plug in like 500 names and send out email to people that didn't exist. You know, Sam at xyz.com, Mary at xyz.com, just hoping they get to somebody. It was back in the Wild West days, I guess. So that's how you set up a forwarder. And forwarders can work fine. They're simple to set up, as you can see. You can set up as many as you want. So that's all good. You can have one for info at, finance at, booking at, service at, and it looks like you have, you know, a larger institution there than one person. And then you could use those things to filter mail too. So if you're sending them into a Gmail account, then you can set up files so that when they come in, they go into those folders. Now you could also set up a regular email account, and that's what this is. So if I were to come in here, and so forwarders were here, instead of going here to email accounts, and you can see there's always a default email account for just general stuff that hits the mail server, but you could also create one. So if I'm going to create an account, and it might be something like Bob at beyondzerowaste.net, and then I can enter a password. And again, don't use, you know, your standard name of your dog or something like that. Generate a password. That's always stronger. So you can see what they've got here. And then if you're using a password manager, then I would save all this information in my password manager the first time I log in, so I don't have to remember it. And by the way, that password manager also works on my phone. So if I come in through my phone to try to get to a website or email account, I can do that as well. So when I set this up, which I'm not going to because I don't need the mail, well, I guess I should show you the next step. So after I set this up, you can see you can set your storage space, automatically create folders, just a couple settings there. I'll go ahead and create. I'll just delete it when I'm done. Okay, so we now have a second email account, Bob at beyondzerowaste.net. And I can come in here and you can see here, well, this is the Brave password manager. It asks me if I want to save it there. I'm just going to disregard that. I'm not going to click never because I might someday save something on the site and want to save that. But I just click here to get rid of that and don't respond at all. So you can see here that I've got email set up. I've got a gig of storage. I could check mail here. It would show me anything coming in. I could manage here to change passwords and things like that if I need to. And then you can also set this up to work with different devices. So here's configure connect devices. So suppose now I wanted to pull this in through my phone through a regular mail account, like if you have Microsoft 365 mail, Outlook, or something like that, then these are the settings you would use. And you can also use these settings with a Gmail account. So it's important not to leave your mail on the server, but you can go into Gmail, and let me freeze my screen again for a second, just for security. And I'm going to go into my Gmail account and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, it's opening up now. Then I need to get into settings. Bear with me. Like I said, my machine's a little slow tonight, but it's loading. Loading very slowly. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to unfreeze my screen. So what you're seeing now is if you go to Gmail, and you can set up, a free Gmail account, as many as you need. There's some limits on space unless you pay. I happen to have G Suite because I need unlimited storage online, and this provides it. But whenever you're in your Gmail, you go over and you'll see the little cog here. That's for your settings, and just go into settings, and then you'll see all of this. So you can look at specific accounts. Come on, you can do it. There we go. So this is all your settings for your accounts, and you can send mail as and check mail from. And now that makes this work beautifully, because the limitation of a forwarder is if you try to respond back, you're responding back from your Gmail account or whatever the target account was that you're forwarding to. But if you set up the account like I just showed you here, where you have this information, so your incoming server, outgoing server for your SSL, so you use this information to confirm with Gmail that I want to send mail as another account, and I want to add a mail account. So I want to have Gmail pull in my mail. So I can put in that email address here. In that case, it would be Bob at, I think this is right. And it doesn't matter if it is, I'm not going to walk through the whole thing anyway. And then click next. And you can see here now they want to know the password for the email. That's what we just set up. And then what port's it on. And they give us that information in Green Geeks. And then whether or not you want to leave a copy of the message on the server. I would say no, because if you do that, your server is going to fill up really fast. And check, depending on the Green Geeks account you have, that might not be a problem. But it depends on if you have limited server space or unlimited server space. But that's just something to consider. And then you can label the messages, so you can tag them as something when they come in. And that way they can all come in as one folder, and use SSL, I always advise. So when you put this information in and say add account, then that's going to add an account here. And when you say send mail as, it'll let you choose from that account you just verified. So you could have different websites up, and I've done this on another Gmail account, where I have an email account for more than 150 websites that's just info add. And they all come into that Gmail account, but they're doing it the way I just showed you. And when I respond, it's set to automatically respond from whatever address it was sent to. So when I go to reply back, it'll say, info@greengeeks.net as the sender instead of Bob Hollis at Gmail. And so that's how you can set up the account. So set up the account directly on cPanel in your hosting account, and then just use Gmail as the mail reader, where you're pulling all the mail in from that account that you set up. And that's how that works. So let's see. Okay, and I see that that was what you were looking for. Okay, so if there are any other questions, keep them coming in. Otherwise, we'll go right back here. So we've talked a little bit about security and hosting, and that's exactly what we're talking about now with cPanel and mail hosting, and then website structure and technology. And basically, as you can see here, a website is just a series of files. So you have a whole bunch of files, and they're sitting here in folders. And they kind of point to each other, and they point to software that can also do things. So you have what's called a database on the back end, and usually it's MySQL, and this is a Linux server. So it's usually a MySQL database on the back end, and that database is just a bunch of tables. So like imagine spreadsheets, but they're all relational. So you might have thousands and thousands of spreadsheets that have tables and all this information in them. And then PHP is a language that where you interact from the front end of the website, and you can put information in, and that program runs, the software runs, and it pulls information back and forth from the tables. And that's basically how a website works. And your folders are all just content. So you can see here in this particular example, we had some subsites set up in here. But usually if you went in from the back end, you'll see WP content. And then in that content, here are all your plugins. And you can see here's an example of cache. So I mentioned the cache lives all over the place. There's an example. There's a cache folder right there. But I can look at my plugins and see all these plugins that are in there. So if you ever have a plugin that seems like it's not working, or if you get an error on your website, one of the fastest ways to check to see if it's a plugin conflict is that you can come back here. And so I'd go say right here to WP content, and then I'd just disable all my plugins at once. So suppose I was trying to load Beyond Zero Waste and it wasn't coming up, but I couldn't figure out why, and there's a possibility that it's plugins. This is where I would come and look. And the first thing I could do is just rename this file to, and I always use a dot, which makes it basically disappear, but don't panic if it does. Up here in settings, you can see I have it set to, excuse me, I couldn't hit my mute button fast enough for this these to come out. But you can see here I'm showing hidden files. If suddenly your dot files aren't there, like you're like, uh-oh, where's my .htaccess file? Where's the plugin file that I just put a dot in front of? All you have to do is go up here to settings and say show hidden files, and it's back. But with that dotted out like it is, I could go to the front end of that website now and try to load it again, and it won't load any plugins. So if it loads fine without those plugins, now I know that it's one plugin or another that's causing the trouble. And I can go in and reactivate those one at a time until I get what it is. But a faster way to do it is start checking your error logs. So first go into public HTML, and you look for anything that says error. And usually you'll have some. I'm surprised there are none here. Well, I guess since this is a dev site, we've never really put it online. We're just storing some things here right now. But normally you'd find an error file there, and you can look into that error file and see what's going on, because it'll tell you, again, no errors. How about that? Normally you can look at an error file and it'll show lines, and if you read the line, you can see which plugin failed. So you might, in fact, I just did that this morning for someone. It turned out to be Backup Buddy. And I could tell first if I disabled the plugins, then the site came up fine. And so I knew it had to be something, so I put the plugins back on. I deleted the error file to clear out all the old stuff, loaded it again so that I'd recreate the error, came back and looked, and it told me exactly what it was, that Backup Buddy had an error on line 834. So now all I had to do was go in here to Backup Buddy. So again, you just go to, close that. So you go to Content, Plugins, there's Backup Buddy. I need to take that out of the picture. So I just renamed it with a dot. Reloaded the site, everything came back up fine. And once it came back up fine, I reinstalled Backup Buddy, and everything worked perfectly. So there was some kind of conflict, I think, that occurred because a bunch of other plugins updated and WordPress updated, but Backup Buddy didn't update for some reason, so it was stuck on an old version, and that old version was making the site crash, so the site couldn't even update it at that point when it tried. So it was basically in a loop where the crashed plugin stopped what normally fixes crashed plugins from working. And then once I got it working again, I went back and just deleted this file because I already had the new file in there for the new installation of Backup Buddy. So that's basically how a website works. And you can have multiple sites. Like in this case, we had a few that were all working. This was a development site, but even within your own, you can set up multiple sites right in your own cPanel. So depending again on the package that you have, you can do it that way if you want to. And then of course we also talked about multi-sites. and that's pretty easy to set up as well. Well, it's slightly technical to get it set up, but once it's set up, it's very easy to use. Okay, let's see. I see another question here. Do we manually back up our sites? That also depends on your program, like what kind of a package you have. I don't trust anybody in terms of relying on them to make sure that I don't get my butt in trouble and think they're going to bail me out. So it's good to have a service that does something like that. Like I noticed on the GoDaddy package I looked at today, they said that it does include regular backups. And if you're on a shared hosting plan, you can check with them. But typically they back up at least once a week and sometimes every couple of days. The important things to know are how frequently they back up, how many copies of the backup they keep. Because what can happen is, let's say you have your site set to backup every day, and your site goes down on a Friday while you're off hiking on the Appalachian Trail, and you come back on Tuesday morning and your site's down, and you say, oh, could you restore my backup from yesterday? Well, the problem is yesterday's backup was also a bad site. So if you have it only being backed up, say every couple days, and every couple days it deletes the prior backups, it doesn't save them, then you can get yourself in a mess where even your backup files are corrupted and can't be restored to save the site. So what I do is you can use Backup Buddy, or you can use just dozens of options out there. And again, check with your server company to see what they do for you. But I still wouldn't rely just on them. If your site ever goes down, you should be able to call the server company and say what's going on. And they should be able to troubleshoot it and tell you. So you don't have to go through all this stuff by yourself. They don't expect most people to know how to do most of this. So if we were to go into, let's say, here, am I even logged in? I don't think I am. So let me log in here, and I'll show you what I do with Backup Buddy. And I also like Updraft Plus. Backup Buddy, if you have a really large site, can be the problem. If you have a small site, it works lovely. But if you have a large site, it tends to time out. So yeah, I'll save that. So let's see, do I have Backup Buddy installed here? Oh, it doesn't look like I do. So I'll just do that. Okay, so I'm going to add new. And Backup Buddy itself is a paid plugin. So you need to purchase it and then download the file and install it this way instead of from the plugin directory. So I know I have a copy saved on my, oh wait, no, I don't, I'm not on my PC. Okay, I don't have a copy of it saved here. This is my Mac. I'm on my big 40-inch screen, and normally that's where I show my PC. But today I have my Mac linked up to it, so I was thinking I was on the same computer. So what you would do is just install the plugin, and it'll walk you right through instructions. And one of the things I do is in Backup Buddy Pro, you can set the backups to store different places. One of the things that people do that's generally a mistake is they back up their site and then they leave it sit. They leave the backup sit on the exact same server. So if your server crashes, it takes the backups with you. So that's not good. So what I do is I set up Backup Buddy to automatically do a full backup, usually at least once every 2 days. I have it saved at least 10 full backups, but where they go is not on the server where they just take up a bunch of server space, but I have them go out to my Google host drive. So I have a Google Drive with unlimited storage capacity, and I also have an Amazon web server, AWS platform called S2. And so whenever a backup gets made, it sends one copy of the backup to my Google Drive and sends another copy of the backup to Amazon. And I have in the past also had Dropbox. I just decided I don't need all of that, so I'm dropping my Dropbox accounts. But that's generally how you would do it. And that way, if something crashes, you have backups in 3 different locations. And they're not taking up your server space. So, okay, I'm not seeing any other questions there. Hope that answers that. Then there are plenty of free backup options too. So let's ignore backup buddy for a minute. And let's just see what comes up here if we put Updraft, because Updraft is also a pretty good one. There are a lot of them that give you basics for free, and then they charge if you want the more extended features. Often like this, like see how I said back up to Dropbox, Amazon S3, Google Drive. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And this is a fantastic one. This is one that I might switch over to and start using more than Backup Buddy, even on my small sites. But so to install that, you saw we just went to plugins, add new. I'm going to install that right now. And you know you're onto something good when you pull it up and you see all these other add-ons for it. That means a lot of developers recognize it as a leader and want to build extra tools for it. So I'm going to activate that. Okay, so press here to start. So you can see they walk you right through it. I usually, first thing I do is close that thing down. It just goes straight into settings. And by the way, remember how I mentioned that updates are incredibly important. Usually you want to do a backup before you do an update. But WordPress is really rock solid, so I've never had an issue where doing an update crashed the site. One thing different about WordPress and Joomla that I've noticed is if it goes to update and it looks like a plugin will crash the site, it just won't load that plugin. So that'll keep you out of trouble sometimes. But when you see something like this, where they're talking about updates and you see a little circle up here with a number in it, I'm going to do things in reverse right now. Normally you do the backup first, but I don't know how long that'll take on this site. So I'm just going to do this to show you how to do it. The most important thing for security, other than having strong passwords that you don't share, is to keep all your plugins up to date. Because what often happens is there's a vulnerability gets discovered, and then if they're ethical hackers, they report that vulnerability to the developer, and then the developer has a chance to fix it. Once the developer fixes it, they release a patch or an update, then it gets announced to the world that this software has a vulnerability. That way you're warning people to make sure that they update their software. But that's also when the hackers get a hold of it. And they'll use bots to scan the web and look for any website still using the old software. Once they find that, they can exploit whatever the vulnerability is that they're in. So you always want to make sure you update your software every day. Don't let that sit. It's often a security-related issue. So I just took care of that, and then, but now let's go back to our backup here. I'm going to go into, sometimes when you install a new plugin, it'll show things over here. Other times you have to go into the settings themselves. So here you can see Updraft backups are hiding down here under settings. But I also noticed that you can get to it from within the plugin in this case. So for example, if we go to plugins, and we'll look for Updraft Plus, settings. Okay, let's see. Not a problem. Let's make a backup. Just press the backup button now. Okay. So that's what it was saying. Let's see what it does here. And you can see this is just the basics. So I'm going to hit backup now. Let's see what options it gives us here. Normally I go into settings first. Let's just take a look. So file backup schedule is currently manual. Retain this many scheduled backups. Database backup manual. And these are the places you can save it to. So you can save it to Google Cloud, Dropbox, Amazon S3, Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, So a lot of places that you can store your server backups so that they're not on the server itself. And you can send it back up to more than one destination with the add-on that they're talking about. And that's what I do. So I have redundant, that's the highest level of security, is redundant offsite backups. So even if it's on a server and a building burns down, you lose everything. That's why they should be offsite. They should be redundant, so you have one in multiple locations. So you're generally safe. And let's see if it'll let you schedule. Okay, so it does. So you might want to do a full backup, maybe weekly. I'm amused that they include fortnightly. That's impressive. Which, of course, is 2 weeks, but you don't hear it used very much. So anyway, you can set that up, and on your database, you can say set up daily. And I would keep more than this, say at least 10 on the database, because it's going to be pretty small, so it's going to have plenty of backups. And on the full one, it's weekly. If we just say 4, now we can go back a whole month. And if we don't find a problem, we'll have plenty of time to go back and bring in what we need. So that's what this would do now automatically. And you can tell it what to include. So plugins, themes, uploads, etc. Check to have a report set to your admin address. We'll save changes, but I'll probably disable this before we end the session here tonight, just because I don't want to accumulate a bunch of backups on a site that I'm not concerned about. And let's see the advanced tools. This is just additional information. It tells you a lot about your server. And these are the premium extensions. So if you pay for the premium version, you can see what you get with that. So cloning and migration, incremental backups, more support. All right. Most of the time, I don't need any of the stuff they offer for the upgrades. Sometimes you might, though, so don't just dismiss it. But I also get deals. Being a developer, I can get pretty good deals on packages that are otherwise somewhat expensive. So let's go back here and we'll follow their directions here and just do backup now. And so this is what I was talking about. This option here. Let's see. Yeah, I know. Yes. Okay, that's fine. Once this is going, what I wanted to show you is whenever you go to do an update, once this is installed, it'll ask if you want to do a backup before you do your update. And it'll ask if you want the software to remember that choice. So in that case, every time it goes to update, it'll create a backup first. And that'll keep you from having any possible issues that might be caused by doing an update that wasn't quite ready for prime time. So this could take a while. I don't recall having too many big files on this computer, or on this website, so it shouldn't take too much. But you can see what it's doing down here. So you can watch these numbers change as it's opening and batching things. So we'll just let that ride, and let's see what else is on our agenda for this evening. So I was going to duplicate that tab like I usually do, but that might trigger a whole other backup process. So I don't want to do that. All right, so that basically covers domain registration, hosting, security, technology. Second, we did the introduction to WordPress. And just to remind you of all the wonderful things available for WordPress, you can go to wordpress.org and find a tool for almost anything you can imagine. So I recommend setting up an account for yourself. It's free, and it allows you to save favorites and find them again easier later. So you can go to plugins here and search on anything that you like. So let's just say something like event registration. Oops. Here are a whole bunch of options for event registration. So if you're putting together a party or a workshop or a talk, you can use any of these tools, and they help manage online. They sell tickets. You can even have it so You can see here, ticket sales, it'll even create a code. So somebody can come in and purchase the ticket online. Then they get a ticket that goes to their phone, or they can print it. And when they walk into the venue, you can scan it with your phone and it'll update. So each ticket might have its own little barcode, or what's called a QR code, a quick read code. That's the one that looks like a square and has a whole bunch of, it looks like some kind of alien language inside of it. That's called a QR code. And when somebody takes an image of that shape, then you can read that in your phone. So if you have somebody checking the door and people came in and bought tickets through your system, when they walk in the door, you can scan their ticket, and that updates the registration event for the event and says that that person attended. And if somebody else then tried to use that same ticket and you scan it, it'll say invalid, it's already been used. So that's pretty fancy stuff, and you can do all that right through a WordPress site. So a lot of times it's better to just use a basic registration form for something like that. That's what I tend to use more than anything else, like something like Gravity Forms. But these are available for somebody who's doing something more sophisticated. Like, say, for example, you were doing an entire conference, and you had people coming in at different times, different days, and 20 or 30 sessions going on all at the same time. That's where you'd want to use a more advanced event manager type plugin than something like a form. But there's so many things here. Almost anything you've ever seen on the website anywhere, WordPress has a tool to do it. All you need to do is find the right tool and plug it in and turn it on and configure it. And most of that is easy for 95% of the plugins available out there. Okay, let's see. We're still backing up here, but it's really taking a while, isn't it? Change files. Well, let's see. Oh no, this is well, that's the last log message. Okay, we'll see what happens here. It's gonna keep on going. It's gonna resume after 13 seconds. So what it looks like it's doing is adding incremental backups to make them smaller chunks of files. And the purpose for that is so that when you go to restore, if it's one really large file, you might have a timeout on your server because it's taken forever for that file to upload. If they do it in incrementals, then they're creating a bunch of small files that'll then work together. So you can see it just took another activity and jumped. So that's what it's doing. Everything's working fine. It's just going through the processor. There we go. So the backup has finished running and close. So now we have a backup file right here. And if we ever had a problem, we get the site opened up. If these are stored on a third-party server, the first thing you would do is upload them back into here. So you can see upload backup files. So say your whole server went down, the computer got ran over by a car, it's just gone. Then what you do is get back onto your server or onto wherever your new hosting is, and you can upload the backup files, and it would look just like this. And then all you have to do is click and restore, and it'll put your site right back in place. So I would recommend doing something like this. So it's fine to have a hosting company that says they're doing backups for you, and it's good to hold them accountable. If your site goes down, tell them you want them to restore a backup. They shouldn't charge you anything for that. But have your own on hand just in case, because you wouldn't believe the number of new clients I've gotten when they call me and say, I'm in trouble, my whole site's gone. The server company says they can't help me, that it's gone from their servers too, they don't know how to restore it. And I say, do you have backup files stored anywhere? And if it's a yes, I can usually restore them. But if not, if you're just relying on your hosting company, then you're in a tough spot. So those are my thoughts on backups. Then I do recommend, it looks like in the free version of Updraft Plus that you can use the, let's see, you can use one of these, so that's fine. So, store them on Amazon S3 is really inexpensive server space. Google Drive, you can even set up just a free Google account Those hold up to 15 gig, I think, for the free account. So once you set those up, you can even rotate. If you have something where, like say each month you're using 12 gig with backups, then just open a Gmail account that's called, my website January 2019, my website February 2019, something along those lines, and just save your backups on different Google accounts, depending on how big they are. 15 gigs a lot, but I have some sites that are that big, so they couldn't rely on that. But I have also, as I mentioned, unlimited space on Google Drive because of the type of account I have. But that's what I would recommend. Definitely store it someplace offsite on a secure third-party server. And it's best to even do it on a couple of them. And that's the one that you can't do unless you have the premium version, which I do. So I use typically Amazon S3 and Google Drive. And then I leave a couple of them right on the server. So I'll leave a couple backups sit on the server, but also have copies sent out and save more backups on the third-party servers. And that way, if something goes wrong, but I can still get in, I can update right here without going through the process of trying to download, say like a huge site that was 15 gig, I would have to download 15 gig worth of files or upload them to the server, but download from one server, upload to another server before I can even restore my backup. So that takes a long time in itself and could be subject to timeouts. So I like having a copy local that stays in here that I could get to, like this. So I might only have, say, 3 of these that are full backups, maybe a week apart. But if I went out to my Google Drive, I might have 10 that cover, the last couple of months because I'm not as worried about space there. So it's convenience versus long-term security. And as long as it's redundant, there's nothing wrong with having a copy or two sitting right on your server. So I don't have to go through the upload process just to get it back to here. Okay, that handles the backup question, I think. I'm not seeing any others follow-up questions to that. So we will keep moving forward. All right, so going back out to, let's see what I can get rid of here. I've been pwned. By the way, I'm going to send this link out to all of you, and I strongly recommend that you put your email addresses into it. Don't be afraid. It's if they're out there and you've been pwned, then not knowing doesn't help you. You should know, and it's easy to fix if you do know. 90% of it is just going into the account that's been pwned and changing your password, and also making sure before you even change your password, if you can still log into the account, then check your secondary and backup information, because what some hackers will do is they go in and the first thing they do is change your backup contact information to theirs. So if you go in to try to change the password, they get a notification asking if they want to approve it. So the first thing you do if you think you've been pwned is log in on that account, check your backup information, make sure that it's your phone number and your backup email address and that sort of thing that they're going to verify with. Then change your password to something that you don't use anywhere else and is more complex than your previous password, and that should solve the problem. Not always, but usually. That's all you need to do. So I sent that out in the chat box. If you want, you can click and bookmark it and check your own email addresses. And I believe we can shut this down now, but I'll leave it up in case anything else comes up related to hosting. So let's go back up front. And so that's WordPress. You can see all the things there that are available, features and functions. Again, just about anything you can imagine. If any of you who are online today have some feature in mind that you don't know if you can do or not, let me know and we can take a look at it tonight and see how it looks and how you can go about it. Theme design and implementation. There I highly recommend using Elementor. We've been using that, I believe, on everybody's site that we're working on. Really cool layout opportunities and a lot more sophisticated than what you can do with just the plain old WordPress editor. So remember though, if you are editing in Elementor, not to go back and try to edit in WordPress later, because that'll break your code basically. So you can see here I can edit with Elementor. If I go to click edit page without edit Elementor, it's still going to give me that option. So you can see here, edit with Elementor. If I click back to WordPress editor, it's going to give me a warning. Please note that you're switching to WordPress default editor. Your current layout, design, and content might break. So respect that, because it does. And so I'm going to click cancel. Now there's nothing wrong with it if you decide to do it with intent, but you can also just create a new page and just use your WordPress editor in the new page without using Elementor if you've decided that there's something you're unhappy with about the way Elementor is laying out. But for a quick review of Elementor, if you do go into edit, there we go, it's loading. So the basics of Elementor are sections with columns in the section, and sorry, I usually turn my phone off completely, but my wife and daughter are driving to Disneyland right now, and want to make sure they can stay in touch from the road. But anyway, if I want, it's just all about sections and columns and widgets. So if you, or elements, whatever you want to call them. So if I were going to create a new section for a page, I just click here. I could also just drag something in to get it started, but you start with the section and what kind of, how many columns you want in the section. So let's say that I want 3. There's my section. Now suppose this is a divider, and you divide up content with color to separate concepts and that sort of thing. So I might want that to go all the way across the screen to keep my content contained. So what I'm going to do is come up here. We just added this section. I'm going to come up and say stretch the section. So you can see now it goes all the way to the edges. So suppose I wanted that to be a gray panel or something like that. Now I can go here to style and background type, and you can do normal and hover. And that's a nice way to indicate if something's clickable, for example. And right now it's transparent. We could also put an image there for the background if we had an image to use, but we'll just go with color for now. And let's say I'm going to make it green, but when you click, it'll go blue. So we'll take that green color as the regular, but when they hover, I want it to be blue. Okay, so now if I hover over, you can see that color changes, so that adds a nice effect. Now, what am I going to do in these boxes? Let's say I want some images. I'm going to click, well, I like to do update frequently if I like what I see, so I don't accidentally leave a page or crash and lose it. So I'm going to go here now to Elements, click here, and that brings up all of these. And suppose I wanted an image here, and text here. I tend to use the text editor for everything, including images. There are some reasons not to, like, for example, if you're going to do something with a hover effect where the image changes color, you're really using 2 different images, then I would use something more advanced. But otherwise, I just use text editor for everything because it includes all the options that you have in WordPress. So let's say I'm going to put text in the middle. I'll just drag a text box there, and you can see there's some text, and I can change that to whatever I want it to be. If I were going to have a header or something to grab people's attention inside the box, you just change that from paragraph to heading. And of course, that did the whole thing because of the way it was in there. If I want to fix that, I can do this and then just add some space. And I would normally just go into the text side and fix it. And I'm going to show you that just in case, because it can get frustrating sometimes. Like if I go to change this and it changes all of that again, I'll show you how to prevent that from happening. Yeah, see, it did, because it's seeing it all together. So all you have to do is click text so you can see the actual code. And this is what's called an opening tag. So that's your heading 1 opening tag. And down here it's the same thing, but that's the closing tag with a slash in it. All I have to do is move that closing tag up here to where I want it to be. And now you'll see that heading 1 is just the top line of the lorem ipsum text. So now if I go back to visual, there it is. So that's more like what we were looking for. And we don't like these colors on dark. That would be certainly a section 508 violation. It's just the section 508 is the, I don't like using the word ADA code, but it's the accessibility section that deals with web content and digital content. So you can see what I did here. Now, one issue you run into using white text is exactly what you see. If you're using white text on a background of an editor that's white, it's hard to see what you're doing. So I'll leave it in the color that I can work on it with, and then change it to white right before I log out or save. So I'll go ahead and save that. And then I might want an image in each one of these. So I can go back here to my elements, and I can either use the image element, and I'll show you, I can drag that in and say here. And now it's going to ask me what image do I want, what size do I want, how do I want to align it. So I'll just find something here. I don't think we have very many in here, but we'll just pick that. So there it is. And if I want a different one over here, same thing. But you'll see that I can also do that with the text editor. So with the text editor, I can just get rid of that text and go straight to my media library and pick something from there and do it the same way. So here it is in the text editor. There it is with the picture element. Then I can do the same thing if I want to center it. So you can see they do the exact same thing. The difference is, in here, I have all these other options. So I can put text down below it, above it, whatever I want. I can insert a table, and I can still do all my image things except the hover option. If I use the image option, you can see you don't get any of that. You basically put the image in, and that's it. And then you can choose a normal and hover. So you might have one, say you have two exact images like icons, and one's blue and one's green. You can put one on top of the other and have the one on top go totally transparent when you hover. So it looks like when you hover, it's changing colors. You're actually seeing just two different images that are different colors. So that's the kind of thing you can do in an image element that you can't do in a text element. But for what I do, almost always the text element's the way to go. But you also have other options. So there are things like, say I needed spacers because one of these was bigger than the other and I want to line them up. You can just drag a spacer in here, and you can control where this sits by the height of the spacer, like that. You can add buttons. Let's see if I can drop that. I guess I'll drop it here. So there's a button, and I can change what I want that text to say. Never use click here. That's just that's been considered bad style since like '94. Use something like read more or buy your ticket, like an action item. Saying click here to find XYZ is just about the worst way you can say it. The words click here should never appear on your website. If you have to tell people click here, your design's wrong, because they should know where to click just by your design or what your text is. So I can say something like learn more or read more, something like that, then that works, but not click here. If it were an action item, it might be like, register now, something like that, but not click here to register. Just use register now, or even just register. Then they'll know what that means when they come over here. Then you can change the color too of your buttons. And what I like to do is I change if I know what color I want my buttons to be based on the style of my site, then I change it in one place in the code so that every button automatically comes up that color from now on. But you can see here how you can change your background color. I just changed it from green to blue. Of course, that doesn't work well on this either. So maybe background is blue when you're on green, and then when you hover, we'll make it green. So these basically switch out. So the blue turns green and green turns blue, both on the background and the button. That certainly gets your attention. So there's an example of all the different things you can do. And you've got your general add-ons here. You can put in accordion and toggles, social icons, SoundCloud if you have music of some kind you want to load. And then a lot of times in WordPress, you have what's called shortcodes. So your program allows you to put a shortcode on a page, and it'll render whatever that program or software is supposed to do. That's what you would do with this as well. And then down here, these are the WordPress options. So you can click here, and this will show you the normal widgets that are all in WordPress. So you still have all those available to put in your pages too if you want to. So like say I wanted a login form right here. I can just, well, let me create a section first. And I'm just going to make this a big one. Full space. There it is. Now I can go out here and, oops, here, and drag in a login box. Let's see, where did that go? Yeah, right here. So I can drag that in. And we don't have the form set up, but here's where you put your title, your text, whatever you want. Log in, log out, whatever you want it to be. And that's where now it's a login button. Then you can hide it on different pages if you wanted to. You could also move these things around. So suppose I created all this and I decide, you know what, this should be higher. I can just grab it right here and drag it up to the next spot and put it there. Now, if I had a bunch of them, say like 30 of these things stacked, and that's hard to drag up and down the page, I can go over here and click Navigator, and it shows me each of my sections. So now if I wanted to move this section again, I can just grab this and slide it here instead of playing around here on the page. So that comes in pretty handy. And then when you're done, of course, always update. And once you get a master page done, so let's say you have your header and your footer, and now you want to build out other pages and you want that same header and footer, you can do it a couple ways. If you have a lot of stuff in the middle that is generally going to be laid out the same, you can come down here right above the drag widget here box, right click and copy all content. That'll copy every single thing on the page. And then when you go to open a new page, edit with Elementor, go into this box and hit paste, and it'll basically clone the whole page. And then you can customize the content in the middle, but now you know your header and your footer are going to be identical as you want them to be. Now, there are also ways to save those as global templates for making pages, but that's a little bit deep to get into for now. I think you get the hang of it here. And you can copy and paste, sections too. So suppose I like this section, but I was going to do it in a different color down lower. I can just come up here, duplicate, and that'll make a second copy here for me. Or I can copy just this section and go to another page and add it on. So that was the other way to handle the header or footer, is go ahead and build out your pages, but just go up to your header, which I don't think I even have on this site. I don't really. Go up to your header and copy that, and then put your header on every page, and then go down to your footer, copy that, and put your footer on every page. And you're all set. Now, again, there are ways to do that with templates, so the way I'm describing is the most elegant way, but it's the easiest way without learning a lot and digging in. So this is, okay, that's only available on the Pro feature anyway. So you can have a global widget that you add to multiple areas and edit it all from one place. That can be important, say, for a footer. And the sites we've been working on are relatively small, but I have some websites that have 600 or 700 pages. So you can imagine if we had to go in and update the footer on each of 600 or 700 pages, that's not going to work. But you can use a global widget here where that widget shows as the footer everywhere, and you just edit it in one place. And if any of you get into a situation where you need Pro, let me know. I can kind of get that for you for free too. It's not technically free. I pay for a developer license that gives me the option to put it on like 100 websites, but lots of websites. If you pay by yourself, you pay a lot of money just for one site. So I kind of pay for a larger fee and it allows me to put it on almost unlimited sites. So any site that I'm working on, I can add it to if you need those features. Okay, so that kind of covers the design, I think. There were a lot of tools we went over, and some that I save here for myself. Here's where, this was an interesting one. A client recently asked me to complete. I do a lot of projects for public agencies and government, and now actually one that just went out today, I'm working with the entire state. These development zones that go from Oregon all the way down to Mexico, 37 of them all just became clients today. So I'm going to be doing a lot for them, and anything that's published with funding public dollars needs to meet Section 508 accessibility. So to cover that, basically, that's fine. I'm not going to save any of this. This is what the EPA guidelines are, and this is just happens to be EPA, and they have a lot on here. So EPA doesn't oversee Section 508. They're just adhering to it, and they put all the tools on here for what you'd like to see. So what is Section 508? Frequent questions, Section 508.gov, the final FAR rule. So if you're doing federal contracting, you want to make sure that you're 508 compatible, and compliant would be a better word. And then beyond that, there's this whole new thing that I've been asked to do for the first time, which is called VPAT. And this is a standard put together by an organization that's specifically focused on this. So you can see this group is a global reporting format for assisting buyers and sellers, for maintaining these standards for Section 508, 549, and W3C compliant. So it combines all of it. Here are the standards for it. And then you need to fill out this form that basically verifies. So we're going out into the Federal Register. That's not what I was looking for. But the concept to keep in mind is that you might be asked to complete something like this at some point. So every site that I develop, whether it's publicly funded or not, I want to make sure I meet those standards just to be a decent human being and try to help people that might need accessibility to a website. So they might use screen readers or something along those lines. And that obviously just helps people live a little better. So anything we can do to make sure that's better works. And it also affects Google ranks. So Google even looks at things like contrast. It wants to know the quality of your site. So you think about how Google makes money. People come there to do searches and look for information. If they're pulling up crappy sites that they don't like, they're not going to be happy with what they find on Google. So what you want to do is make sure that you build your site this way anyway. And what some of the basic things they talk about is are your headings large enough for people to read? Is the contrast between your text and your background good enough? And there are a lot of free tools you can even use for that. And you can build them into your site. So I don't think we've talked about that. Let's go back here and go into the dashboard. I want to see if this plugin is still here. There was one that I've shown people before that helps make this a lot easier. Then you can test your own site. So let me try first Section 508 and see if something comes up. Oh, there's a bunch. Check this out. So here's the WP accessibility tools and missing alt text finder. Remember how I've been talking about you want to put alt text in for all your images. And that was for two reasons. One is search engine optimization. The other is screen readers. So alt text is what you see when you hover over something. And a lot of times screen readers need that. And Google uses that. They go through and they look at what all those terms are. So that's why you never want to just upload an image and have it stay your camera number. When a camera takes an image, it'll give it an image number like 45838, something like that, and maybe an underscore DSC. You never want to upload an image with just that because nobody knows what that means. So when you upload it, you want to change the title and then to something relevant. So conferencereg.com as an example. If I had a picture of a conference, I would want to make sure the word conference and probably the word registration was in that image title and also in the alt text. So this one is accessibility tools and missing alt text finder. This is an ADA compliance check. Accessibility by userway. Let's see. The one that I had been using, I don't see here. So I'm just going to grab one and let's see what it does. So here, this one was updated just 3 weeks ago. It's getting decent reviews, but not that many. And if it's like the one that I've used before, what it'll do is actually show you how to score your site, and it'll give you a score. So let's activate that. And now we need to find where we do things. Let's see. Here we go. So that's the ADA compliance basic check. Let's go to settings and see what it tells us there. Okay, so they're going to do a basic scan. Upload, of course, like we talked about. All right, so let's just see. I'm not going to dig into what all this stuff says. I want to see what it tells us. You can set scan rules here, it looks like. So here's an example of all the things that you would check that I probably have to complete on that VPAT report, that all this is compatible. And so you can see where a tool like this would come in handy. If it'll go through and give me a report that says all this is done, I don't have to go look. I can just run the report, fill out the VPAT, and go. I think. Don't quote me on that. Let's see what happens if we run report, review report. All right, so it is giving us some good information here. 13 pages or posts are unprotected. I'm not quite sure what that means. 2 media library images are missing alt text. So here they're saying use the easy image alternate text plugin. No theme files, widgets, or category pages have been checked. Okay, so this is just basically a sales tool. They're giving you something simple here to let you run it, and then telling you if you really want to use it for anything, you have to buy the plugin. But that's where I always just check others, because I know there are free ones out there that do a lot more than this, that give you a full report on everything that you would need to track. So that's how that all works for BPAT in section 508. And it looks like they built even a reference in here. Okay, so this is probably the authoritative source. Though I'm not certain, I'm just guessing that because that's what they linked us to learn about section 508. And it is a .gov site. Okay. All right, I'm not sure about all of this stuff, and there's probably no reason to spend a ton of time on it, but you get the concept. So just remember that section 508 is what you want to pay attention to when you're doing your designs, and that it's not only going to help you meet federal requirements for publicly funded projects, it's also going to help your readers just enjoy your site more and do more with it. Okay, so let's go back out to Conference Reg, see where we're at. So there's theme design, e-commerce, and website monetization. Remember that this is here. I suggest bookmarking it and saving it if you're into making money on your website. This is the spreadsheet that we covered when we talked about different ways that you can monetize. So if you look at that spreadsheet, remember we talked about Amazon affiliate program, Indeed for job boards. This is education, but that's my company, so I didn't want to promote that. What I really wanted to focus on here was this plugin. It's called the affiliates plugin. So let's say you do sales, you can have somebody, I'll just make up a scenario here. Suppose you have a program where you're selling workshops, and you charge, I don't know, $300 per workshop or something like that. And you have friends that are kind of in your same community of people or the target community that you want to approach, you can set up an affiliate program inside your WordPress site, and it allows them to resell for you and earn commissions. So just like Amazon has a place where you can go set up your account, sell Amazon products and earn commissions, you can set up your own account where other people sell your things and they earn the commissions, but you get the bulk of it and you're doing the work too. So you could have something, say for example, you sell these workshops for $300, and you could set up an affiliate program where if you have friends or family or coworkers or anybody else who wants to promote them, they can put something on their website, where they can send out a link to their Facebook page and say, hey, I attended this great workshop. I thought people here might be interested because it dealt with a lot of the things we talk about all the time. If you're into it, check this out. It's a pretty good price, and I really enjoyed it. Something like that. If one of their Facebook followers or LinkedIn followers or website visitors clicks on that link, that brings them back to your site to purchase whatever the workshop is, and then that gets registered in the back end of the website in a report that shows where that lead came from. So they'll have a specialized link that when it clicks, they know that this was from person A. And then you have their payment information. So what you can do is have that all come in, do it on a cash-in basis. So once you get paid, then you pay a commission out to them through their PayPal accounts, and it's all fully automated. So the WordPress will calculate the commission for you and tell you how much you owe to everybody, and then you click pay, and it pays them the amount they're supposed to be paid through their WordPress or through their PayPal. And that's how you can get other people selling for you just as affiliates. They're not, I guess they're contractors technically, make sure you follow the law, but they're not full-time employees where you would, need to pay Social Security benefits and payroll and all that kind of stuff. And you should probably have a template agreement that you use just to make sure that's all clear, just to keep yourself out of trouble. And that would just be an independent contractor agreement. And if I ever need to write things like that up, I look for other big companies that are already doing it, and I look at what their agreement says. And then I'll take that agreement, modify it for my own needs. And now I know, if you look at, say, what Amazon puts as disclaimers for all their affiliates, then you can make sure that you include all those disclaimers as well. And technically, you're probably best off having an attorney either look it over or provide you a form. Or if you want to have something written by an attorney but not pay attorney fees, you can go to something like Nolo. And I don't know if you know about Nolo, but as small business owners, you probably should if you want to ever do any of your own legal research. And they have a lot of free resources as well, and forums and things like that. So here's what I'm looking for. Let's see if this is it. Yeah, here's Nolo. So this is all legal stuff. So suppose you're setting up a nonprofit or something like that, or here's information on a gig economy. So you're self-employed, gig worker, independent contractor, here are all the products you need. So here's Nolo's guide to a single member LLC, tax guide for gig workers, working for yourself, contracts, working with independent contractors, consultant agreements. That's exactly what we've been talking about. And here's an independent contract agreement, say for a direct salesperson. So there's an example. And sometimes, let's see what they do. Some of these things are free and some aren't. So let's see what they say here. Oh, so that's a subscription fee for $34.99. I don't know if that means you get access to all this for a year for that, or if that's for this document or something. But you see how they do it for you, and you just have to go through and answer the questions so that they set it up correctly. But this way, it's being done by an attorney, and you're not just grabbing one from somebody else's site. So that's another way to deal with any types of legal issues to get started, and not necessarily have to go pay $300 an hour for an attorney somewhere. So monetization, again, there are so many different ways you can do it. We talked about job boards, the affiliate program, conference registration services or polling. You can start a site that does that type of thing as a service. Like there's brown paper tickets, that's what they did. You can do e-commerce through WooCommerce. We've talked a lot about that. You can sell music or anything else that's on iTunes, eBay, link sharing with Rakuten, Amazon self-publishing. If you want to write your own book and publish, it's very easy these days. You can do advertising, like paid direct ads. You can use Google AdSense and have Google populate ads on your site. And then the more people click those ads or view those ads, the more money you get paid from Google. You can do paid directory listings. Again, 8 Books, I think, was bought by Amazon, we've determined recently. But they were a community bookseller for people who wanted to avoid Amazon. Real estate listings, domain cache parking. So people just buy a bunch of domains, leave them on GoDaddy, but let GoDaddy use them for ads, and then they get a commission there. You can have a paid subscription service. So if you do a blog about how to do things, you can have people pay if they want to get access to that information. You can have a members site and have content or features that are only available to subscribers. And subscription is a really good model. You might notice everybody's gone to it lately. I mean, we used to go into, a store and buy, say, Microsoft Office, and it came in a box with a CD in it or a DVD, and you install it on your computer. You don't do that anymore. Now you pay a subscription fee. Same thing with Adobe. You used to buy the software. Now you basically pay a subscription fee. And the reason for that is you can get ongoing recurring income where all you have to do is build up your subscriber base. So let's say that I had some site and I'm trying to reach an income level of $10,000 a month, and I have subscriptions of $100 a month. Then all I have to do is keep adding new subscribers until I get to the point where I'm automatically making as much money as I need every month. But it's no more work. I'm still creating the content. That the same, if I had 3 subscribers, I need to create content, or I can have 300,000 subscribers that are paying for the same content. So you only still have to do the same amount of work. And that's a good reason to do subscriber based. The other thing I've learned from the different types of work I've done is that when you're doing something at an hourly rate, you only have so many hours, and you're trading time for dollars, and that time is limited. That means the dollars are limited unless you raise your prices like crazy. So the other way to do it again is a subscription service where you're getting paid monthly, regardless of how much work you do or don't do, as long as you're meeting the needs of your client base and the service that they're looking for. So that covers monetization. Just remember that that asset is there. Search engine optimization, analytics, free and easy AI tools. We've talked a lot about that. Search engine optimization, you can use Yoast SEO as a starting point and see how that works out for you. And then you obviously want to set yourself up with Google Analytics, which again is free. So if you go to Google and where's Analytics? These are all my Google apps. So again, it's totally free, and it gives you all the information you need to find out what's going on your website. So I don't know if I have any set up on this account. I have a lot of accounts with analytics on it, and this looks like it was just a dev account. Well, that one's actually California Capital. So here, let's say Chat Badger is there. Here's a bunch of different ones, but I could get reports off of all these and see what's going on those sites. And you can have reports that automatically get sent to you weekly or however often you like. And you can install on your, in the back end of your website, you can install a plugin that shows you all this data from inside WordPress. So once you get it set up, you don't even have to go back into Google Analytics again. But if you want to, you see all kinds of information. Like here, for example, it shows which pages are getting the most views, when your users are coming on, what time of day they come on, what kind of devices they're using. See? So this helps you figure out what to do on your website to optimize your guest visitations. So they come on, they funnel into the action item that you want, and then turn into revenue. All right, let's see what else we have to talk about. And if you have any other questions, now would be a good time to get them in. We're coming close to wrap up, and my nights are getting long. I have an 8 o'clock and a 9 o'clock after this. It's a good thing I like what I do. But anyway, so let's see what else we have. So that's the search engine optimization. We talked about that. Content is king. Analytics, we talked about. And free and easy AI tools. Those are some of the things that I showed you if you ever want to get advanced. And for the sites we've talked about so far with everybody that's on the call today, there's probably no need for that stuff. But some of it can be useful if you have active social media accounts and you want something to respond so you don't look dormant. Then you can set up bots that'll do auto responses to Facebook posts and things like that. Digital outreach and promotion, including social media, newsletters, and bots. This was the system I showed you where you can pull in content from anywhere. You can add it as a post to your website. At the same time, propagate it out to Facebook pages, Twitter, LinkedIn, and populate newsletters that all go out to different groups in the community. So if you're doing something that involves a lot of digital outreach, WordPress is a perfect platform to set up that kind of a system and have it run for you pretty much automatically. So with that, I'll see if there are any other questions here. And if not, I might wrap it up so I get a bathroom break before my next 2 meetings start. I'm going to wait a second or two. Not seeing anything else. So as always, get in touch if you want to schedule another one-on-one session with me. I'd really like to have everybody's sites up. Next week is the last scheduled class. So I'd love to have everybody's sites in good shape by the end of that class. So if you want to set up a session with me to complete your site or do some more work on it, just get in touch and we'll get it in the books. And I'm not going to just run away and abandon everybody after the 18th, so don't worry about that. I won't be getting paid for any of this anymore at that point, but that's just fine. I still want to see all this work out. I've gotten to know all of you and I want to see you be successful. So we're going to work together to make sure that happens. And with that, I guess we will check again. Oh, and thank you. I got a response to the thank you that came in through the question box. Thank you for all you're doing out there. And with that, I'll bring it to a close and look forward to talking with each of you again soon. Thank you, everybody. And of course, this recording will go up on our recordings page once it's processed. Have a great week.